What if the conversations we've been taught to avoid about sex, desire, and our bodies are actually the ones that set us free? Welcome to Sex Ritual Radio. I'm your host, Rose Heartsong. This is the show where sexuality, spirituality, and vital health meet, and where we explore the conversations most people consider oh so taboo. Each week, I sit down with fascinating voices exploring intimacy, relationships, healing, and human potential. Let's dive in. Welcome to now Sex Ritual Radio. I've shared with you guys the last couple weeks that I changed my name of my show, and now you know. We shifted from Follow Your Heartsong to Sex Ritual Radio with Rose Heartsong. And we like to talk, obviously, about the title. We like to talk about sex on this show and a lot about intentionality, bringing spirituality and a ritual-like practice into the bedroom. And I got a guest here tonight that I'm really excited about. I'm just going to be honest, I didn't think that this interview was going to happen if you would have asked me a couple years ago. First off, I didn't have the show, so that helps. But second off, we actually kind of started on a funny footing. And so I'm really excited to dive in with her, not only we're going to be talking about fertility, spirit babies, the intentional act of lovemaking to create a spirit baby or have a child, secret sexuality, but we also had some I think I would call it witch wounds that we got to work through and heal through. So Leah is an amazing priestess. She went through the Academy of Oracle Arts with me last year. She's deep in Egyptian cosmology, Hermetic magic. You can share a lot more about what it is that you're here to do and gift. But it's such an honor to have you here. I feel like having you on the show is actually kind of like it's healing to have these conversations, to be raw and to explore in these ways. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Rose. It's so interesting that we are gathered here to talk a lot about healing these deeper wounds. And the sister wound or the witch wound came up for us when we first met. And what I remember is that you had invited me to one of your retreats. And I said I couldn't make it. And then you said that you were sad that I couldn't make it. And I was like, I don't want to be made to feel sad for making my choices or something of that nature. And yeah, and then we were in touch, and then we found ourselves in the same school. And so we had to do ritual work together, and we got to know each other better. But yeah, how was that initial meeting point for you?
Well, it was funny because whatever trigger I brought up in you was not a normal trigger for me. Like, I trigger people. I'm very triggering. I'm an Aries. I'm honest. I'm straightforward. I'm blunt. I'm to the point. But I think it's the word manipulative, actually. And I was like, wow, that's a new one. Okay. That's not a common one. I can take on the common ones of like intense, too honest, too truthful, I get self-centered actually a lot. So that one I'm like, okay, there's some truth to that. Like, and that was it. And so I remember being like, hey, we're in the same circles. Like, that doesn't feel good. Let's clean this up.
Yeah.
And then we hadn't actually met yet in person. We were just on social media. And
Yeah, 'cause I'm in Canada and you're in California.
yeah, we're far. So, but I just intuitively knew that we would be connected somehow. I just knew that. And I was like, let's clean it up. And then we did, kind of. Like, it wasn't like there wasn't chaos. It wasn't that much drama. But it
Yeah.
was I would say, like, I call that kind of energy clunky energy, where it's just like not smooth, you know?
Yeah, because when I started to really look into your work, I was like, oh, she's a real deal Magdalena priestess that is really following the rose path and the path of Isis and the path of sacred sexuality. And this is really the lineage that we found ourselves in. Even though the school we studied in wasn't focused on that, it really is part of the comedic heart of the teachings. And the more I dive into this as a working priestess, the more I realize like it's everything. Sex is everything. You can't escape it.
No, it is everything, 100%. And so, yeah, I mean, I just want to kind of close the energy up a little bit about what we opened up. So it's like when I saw you and we hugged for the first time, I feel like that was like a really sweet moment of like, hey, I see you. Let's reconnect. And now Like we've been connected on Instagram and chatting and stuff, and we don't really know each other that well yet, which I'm excited to get to know you more on this conversation and just to, be authentic about this aspect because I think a lot of people see like the spiritual world is like this interesting hierarchy that if you're like on the spiritual path, then you're perfect, right? Or you should be perfect, quote unquote. And I like to be honest on this show, right? Like clunky energy happens. We're humans. We have the fully human and the fully divine. And that's really what the Magdalene is for me, is the fully human and the fully divine. And we can bring that back into the sexuality loop, right? Where it's this primal, animalistic, reproductive energy, but it also is fully divine. And I think that one of the things, my intention with this show and all the things that I do in my life is to bring the divine back into the bedroom, to bring that sacredness back in. And it's very rare that that happens. And so I'm really excited to dive into this conversation with you in so many different facets around that. And so I'm just curious, do you have any sacred sexuality training? What we did we didn't really do any sacred sexuality training in the academy at all.
Yes, yeah, I did. It's actually what found me was this one particular teacher named Leola Antara, based out of Australia, and she had been doing priestess work for over 30 years, and really brought me into her erotic divinity course. And she has a whole modality called Kundalini Dance, and it was very dance and embodiment based, but also working with running energy up into the sacrum, into the ovaries, into the womb, and then the other chakras as well. And being guided by her also in self pleasure practice. Like, I remember the first time I put on one of her audio meditations and was pleasuring myself to a woman guiding me, and it just felt so weird. But at the same time, it was like I needed that instruction because the practice itself was an edging practice where I would pull the energy up to each chakra and try and go for 7 times before I actually let myself finish. And it was such a powerful purification practice. And yeah, a lot of her teachings are really rooted in what I tend to share, because a lot of it does have to do with embodiment and moving energy and the basics of it. But we don't really see those maps as something that we entrain. Like even in regular yoga practice, we don't talk so much about Ida and Pingala weaving through the chakras. But that's really what she teaches in her Kundalini dance practice, is this elevating of the energy from the lower realms all the way up to the higher chakras and beyond, to unite masculine and feminine within. It's like the simplest map ever. And at the same time, it really comes with a lot of nuance. And if you're not consciously moving the energy, you're also not supporting the rest of the body in unblocking those particular zones. So practice with her a lot, and then
Wait,
obviously
let's
studied
pause.
a lot too. Yeah,
That's
let's hear.
I want to know. So, for those who are listening who don't understand what she just talked about, there's like an ancient photo you can see a lot where there's like two snakes coming out of the bottom of the body, like somebody's sitting in lotus position with their legs crossed. And there's these kind of snakes, and they go up and weave through the chakras on the spine and then meet in this like the third eye, right? I'm like, remember it. Like come in and kind of do like a almost heart like center, and that's working with the different energies of sexuality. What we're talking about is advanced work. Not everybody does that. And it would be a really amazing goal to work towards that in your practice of awareness and meditation and yoga and breath work and so forth. And it sounds like we both teach that, which is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's advanced and it's also the starting point too. It's like if you start to really center yourself in this map that many traditions have talked about, and I'm pretty sure this is how we're designed, although there's always going to be subtleties and nuances to how our energy systems operate. But to really flow into that and trust that, being aware of just your energy in general and how you interact with other people and how it shifts, or yeah, just that awareness will go really, really far. And that's still something that's a daily practice for me.
I say advanced because like a lot of my clients that I work with, just the act of being in the body when erotic energy is present is really intense, and it's simple. I'm gonna say what we're talking about is very simple, but it's so I don't know if I'm using the right words, but like it's advanced in like the embodiment of it is not easy. it's simple but not easy, I guess is the
Yeah.
better way to say it.
That's perfect because it does reveal a lot of what is getting in the way, because if that's how we're naturally designed and the energy wants to flow that way and the connection wants to be made between above and below and vice versa, and God and goddess just want to make love to each other through us.
Mm.
Yeah, what's getting in the way usually is what is at the center of it, which is the heart piece and a lot of the deeper woundings that we carry in terms of our relational uh traumas that we've experienced with each other across many lifetimes. So it really goes deep in that way, and it's an endless practice and there's really
Yeah.
no end to it. So, yeah.
A lifelong practice. Like
Mhm.
your whole life, we can practice it. And I don't think there's like a perfection to get to or a goal to get to. It's just an experience with feeling what is alive in the body.
Yeah, and to understand yourself as a master healer through your sacred eros and how you can run that energy consciously, it really is a game changer because I believe it's the most purifying current there is when we understand how to work with orgasmic energy. And I've been quite lucky that my entire life I've been orgasmic. Ever since I was 15 years old when I started getting sexually active, is like I've always been able to get there and to be able, and it wasn't really an attainment, but yeah, when you feel different kinds of orgasms many different ways, you're like, "Oh, this is how my body operates. What is this?" And
And
then also noticing when it doesn't come as easily too, with different partners. But yeah, I've been fortunate to kind of live this lifestyle that has afforded me some different experiences that, yeah, have informed the way I understand humans to be and how we operate.
so you're going into your next level of training, but I interrupted because I wanted to simplify what it is and like paint a picture.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I've learned from many different priestesses and different tantric lineages, and the Egyptian tantric lineage was really the one that found me because I really appreciated how they use the Ankh as a pathway that they also teach about how we can use the loop of the Ankh, which is the ancient Egyptian symbol with the cross and the loop above it, to amplify energy through the field and to amplify our intentions. And it's something that I learned from another teacher called Kia Ankara, who wrote the book Egyptian Tantric Secrets. And
Mm.
he's also a channel and has been, yeah, very influential. Now we're colleagues, and his teachings are channeled directly from Isis herself. And yeah, very powerful practices again to support the Ka, which is the energy body, in becoming more coherent within and without.
So can you go more into detail about the Ankh and the Egyptian tantric practices and how explain what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Ankh is a divine union code. So it's a symbol that is known to be the key of life, or this powerful code that unlocks portals and pathways, which I believe is true, and also is true of our own bodies. Like our cervix is, as women, just as a side note, they are portals. They are doorways to eternity. And if we understand that, and how they tend to dilate during sex or during menstruation or during lovemaking, and definitely during a baby being born, we can start to understand this portal aspect. So the loop of the Ankh also acts as a portal and an amplification symbol, but it's also part of our breath. So it's also significant of understanding how breath moves through this oscillation between inhale and exhale, which are polarities. And when we're working with the Ankh, we're also working with divine polarity. It's a union code. So we're working with the stem being more the masculine Jed pillar of Osiris, the spine of Osiris, and the arms being the wings of Isis. Or you could also see it as the T shape being the masculine, which is called the Tau, and then the ring, which is more feminine, called the Shen, which can be symbolic of the womb and other portals.
And then
So
stem, right?
yeah,
Like the 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 handle or whatever you
yeah,
called it is
stem.
more like stem, yeah, stuff. Is more like it's a cock representation, right? So is it
Totally. The more phallic nature and the more circulate nature for the feminine aspects. So it's an ancient key that is meant to be a divine union code. And I've worked with it a lot to call in union, because as I'm mapping that pathway on my body and I'm breathing the energy up through the cross into my heart, and I'm spreading my Isis wings and I'm using my arms to amplify the loop. And I can even share a video link if there are show notes to a
Mhm.
practice that people can do, because it's my go-to practice and it's very simple. And there's many variations on it, but the way I do it is a 3 breath sequence that amplifies the energy through the Ankh loop and helps to move that back into the earth afterwards. So it's an offering back to Gaia. At the end of the day, a lot of this work is really just to heal our planet. And it's something that I've seen to be very effective also during orgasms. So you can use the Ankh loop as an amplification tool. That I would call also advanced, because it's something that to imagine a circulation of energy at the moment of orgasm sometimes takes us into our minds. But if that's kind of part of your default and it's something that you would entrain in other practices that you do, it can actually just happen naturally. And yeah, we can talk all about sex magic and orgasms and how that all operates too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of people come to me because they have some sort of spiritual sexual release or a Kundalini experience, and they're really overwhelmed by it, and it really scares them. Like, that's kind of like the primary piece I've noticed is like they'll have this powerful spiritual experience with an orgasmic energy. And it's not necessarily like the traditional orgasm where our nervous systems are usually experiencing like a clitoral, or I call it like jack off energy, where that kind of like short, quick, fast release
Yeah.
that makes you crave it again and again and again, and becomes kind of like an unfulfilled loop of sexual desire. And so I think when we're working with different energies and we're reprogramming and retraining our nervous systems to experience pleasure and moving it up the spine and working with it in different chakra centers, it can be the first time we do it, right? The first time it happens, it's usually not done from an intentional place, usually. It
Yeah.
can, right? But the majority of the population has this erotic spiritual release in their spine or through their kundalini, and they're like, "Wait, what just happened?" Like, and it scares them because they don't understand that their body is capable of experiencing that type of energy, because we have had that type of energy be really shamed and shut down and suppressed because it is so potent and it is so powerful and it's so magical and it's so incredible. And I hope those who are listening right now can understand that like your body is capable of so much more than you even can possibly comprehend. I've been in this practice for 13 years. I've had some magical things happen in my body, and I still know that there's things that I haven't done yet that I know is possible that still scare me as well. It's like it's a practice.
Yeah, and what's scary about it is that to me, I see it as a mini death. Like when we have an orgasm, it really is a mystical psychedelic experience. And I just remember some of my earlier Kundalini orgasms that I've had where it's just like it's cervical and it's going straight up the spine and you can feel like the chakras just clicking on and then crown opening, and it can feel like a lot because there's a lot that is, moving, and this is old, ancient stuff that this kind of energy can move, and sometimes as we're confronting it, it feels like, "Whoa," like we just died, and it's true, some part of us did, because we're on the other side of this ecstasis, whatever that is, that portal that opened up in that bliss moment. And yeah, for me, it was also, yeah, certain medicine journeys that I've been on that have also brought me there into a moment of deep surrender. And surrendering can be scary AF
Yeah, I
because
mean, I think
you have to
that's
let
what
it
it is.
happen.
Is the
Yeah.
surrender piece is the scary part. But I've also like so like right we see in the world of sexuality, the world in conscious kink, and that world there's like this kind of like there's one person that's surrendering and then there's one person who's the leader, right? There's the leader and the follower, or the dom and the sub, or this on the sub is usually the quote unquote the one that surrenders. And that's kind of the masculine and feminine. There's this polarity piece. And I want to say that humans with cocks have these spiritual awakenings too, and it's not just the woman that's learning to surrender and be in her pleasure and release into orgasm. Like a lot of men have had come to me because they're so overwhelmed by this energy that has released in them. And some of them even don't like ejaculate. There's no cum that's involved, but they're having these profound experiences. So it's not just one body or another body, womb owners or not. It can be for both. And it just manifests differently in the body. But it was interesting when you said a little death because I remember, I think in French, I just looked it up. It's la petite mort is what an orgasm is, and it is called a little death.
Yeah.
In French, they say that. Oh. Yeah. So it was interesting that you brought this up because very few women have I ever actually had this conversation with, let alone on a podcast. But you're talking about like having an orgasm inside of the uterus or in the cervix, right? And then moving it up the spine. And I definitely have orgasms inside my uterus. I can feel it. And one of the reasons I know is I had an IUD placed for birth control, and I could feel my uterus contracting around the IUD. Like I could feel the IUD during an orgasm, which was so interesting. Do you know like anything about that? I haven't done any studies. I just know my body knows how to do it.
About cervical orgasms.
Well, just
Yeah.
like and how it works. Like a cervical orgasm, I guess I never really thought about it, is a womb orgasm.
It is, yeah. Well, the cervix, I've done a lot of deep study on the cervix, and I've been taught that it is a stargate. It's actually, like I mentioned, like it's a portal to eternity, and it is the doorway to the temple of the womb. And unfortunately, the doorways to many temples have been ripped off and and just desecrated because of all of the ancient stuff that has occurred against the feminine magic and what was being held in the womb, which was all this creation power, creation mysteries that we all possess as womb carriers. Whether you have one still or not, it's still part. And also, that's what's beautiful about the energetics is that a man can also have all this creation power stored in his hara as well. But the cervix has been really misunderstood because it also holds such memory. Same with the womb, but the cervix holds a lot of memory because that's really like so what's the penis is touching physically when during intercourse. So you're being imprinted and it's holding on to a lot of those imprints. And in that's what accumulates unfortunately in the form of cervical dysplasia and cervical cancers. And I had that problem when I was younger too, and I had to have a LEAP procedure where my cervix got shaved off with a laser, and I think there's still scarring there from that, but also that led me on the healing journey because my womb healing journey has always been associated with these really powerful physical initiations. Like I had an ovarian cyst, and that led me on a womb healing journey after I lost my ovary. And so a lot of things were kind of like coming back to remind me that this healing, it runs very, very deep. And it's something that also requires us to have a new understanding of how these structures actually operate and how we can, yeah, how our cells hold on to things because of traumas. But what I love about it is that because we are conscious beings and if we can start to work with the energy and run the energy in a good way, and for the cervix specifically is running it down and out because it does have its own toroidal field. It is an energy system within itself, and if you study toroidal fields you'll just know that they are fields within fields within fields within fields. Like the whole every atom and every universe is kind of designed in this way where the energy just circulates upon itself. So you can do that with the cervix too, and you can start to consciously release it. And I remember taking a course that was called Cervical Wellness, and it was like quite in depth. It was like 8 modules just on the cervix, and we were practicing this releasing, this constant downflow to clear the cervix and the womb of everything that it was holding on to, and then working the other way. So it's good to do that while you're bleeding as well. But then the other way is to like draw the earth energy up and to fill the cervix and the womb and to reconsecrate your temple so that all the raids from past lives that happened that were causing magical people to either self-exile out of protection or have to really hide due to all the persecution. It's like those are the things that start to come up that we're clearing and healing. So it does go deep in that way, but that's what I'll say about the cervix to start. And then, well, just the orgasmic piece is like once that cervix is actually fully activated, it actually starts to entrain the entire system back into coherence. And that's what's so cool about it because, yeah, it's a very internal feeling and it's almost like a softer orgasm that keeps yourself contained in the energy so that you can actually funnel it towards certain things. That's how I like to work with sexual energy too, is that once you're
Yeah.
in it, you can hold it and you can channel it. Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel like it's interesting you say that. It's like I feel like cervical orgasms really do refine and contain my sexual energy in a different way. Whereas like clitoral orgasms can be a little bit chaotic energetically, and they can
Mhm.
bring like I feel like there's kind of more this like primal animalistic drive, but when the cervix, like I feel like you can't really have a cervical orgasm if you're not having these spiritual practices and you're not learning how to surrender in your body. And last weekend I actually talked about different types of orgasms on the show last Sunday. And I was talking about cervical orgasms. And for those of you who didn't listen, but are listening to this one, I was talking about like kind of like seeing the cervix as like kind of like a rose. And so if you've never had a cervical orgasm and you're like, wait, what? The way I actually first had one was from a yoni massage by like a tantra master when I was 23. And but it's kind of like I think about it as a rose and it needs to be like coaxed open and it takes time, it takes trust, it takes a lot of breath, it takes a lot of like opening of the vagina and making sure everything's juicy and turned on and then also trust and presence from whoever is entering you. But if that's something that's not something you can do in the moment with the person or you don't have a lover, my favorite way is actually a crystal dildo. I love crystal dildo work because it can kind of go in and get the tension out and you can breathe with it and use it kind of like to massage the insides of your vagina. During COVID, I actually got a rose quartz dildo was my first time. And I just like went into ritual, like self-pleasure ritual after self-pleasure ritual. I would like get my cauldron out, do my prayers, do my like herbs, take some mushrooms and just like go into this realm with my own body because I had done my own cervical orgasm. My first one I had was in 2013, so it was a while ago. But during COVID, I was like, wait, like I have time to be with myself. This is cool.
Yes, yes, and yeah, that de-armoring practice is so key because there's so much numbness that we hold in our reproductive tissues, and
Mhm.
that's often what's getting in the way is the numbness, which is caused from dissociation from certain traumas that either we've experienced or our ancestors have or past life stuff. And so, yeah, just taking the time, you can do it with a finger, you can do it with the support of a wand. I really like working with obsidian as well to absorb a lot of these things and yoni eggs as well to strengthen the pelvic muscles. So it's like if you desire to have that kind of orgasm, it's more just getting the stuff that has gotten in the way out, and then yeah, being comfortable with the feeling of being with self, which yeah, those shame imprints go really deep too. Even just masturbation is still taboo. But if you're doing it to heal, I find it just really changes the vibe because you're not even there to have an orgasm. Like often it was just secondary. Like I would just go in there to feel and be like, wow, I've got ridges in there I didn't know about. And just what is this structure? And treating her like a her too was a first for me that my teacher really helped me change my perspectives on is like, yeah, this they are all their own intelligence too.
Definitely, definitely. So, all of the stuff we're talking about is a piece of sacred sexuality. And before we got on today and started talking, we kind of had a pre-conversation. And I think one of the things I want to talk about, because I know that you're helping people bring babies into the world or helping them with their fertility journey. And we talked about something that a lot of people don't talk about, which I would like to talk about right now, is how you have sex impacts how your fertility.
Yes. Yes, it's huge. It's like the most obvious thing ever. And yet, for whatever reason, even in some of the trainings I've done for spirit baby communication, which is another approach to fertility, sometimes you just need to connect with the babies that are wanting to come in and they'll instruct the parents on what needs to be healed or what's a priority. But even in those courses, they didn't really talk much about sex. And it boggled my mind because I was learning from my teachers who were mostly focused on calling in divine union. But then there's this whole other piece to the puzzle where there's so many people that are struggling with their fertility, and they've done everything right. They're doing all the supplements. They go to see the TCM. They're tracking their cycles and everything. And it's very heady. That's the first thing. Sometimes you just have to be in the body and let the body just nurture us into that connection, and the timing of it, that is really important as well. But then there's that piece around how do we actually come into the bedroom? And I know it can be difficult because not everybody is into quote unquote ritual work. And that's why I really commend you on changing the name of your podcast to something that's so bold. Like, what is ritual sex? But a lot I could say about that, and how what I've learned. I mean, I've learned from Margot Anand as well, who's like one of the more OG teachers on sex rituals, sex magic. But it's really fascinating because only just recently, when I started teaching about fertility, that's when I called in a person I could actually practice tantric sex with, because for years it was a solo thing. I mean, I'd have certain moments with other partners, and I've had some deep ones with certain initiators, I'll call them, with codes to swap. But now that I've been in this tantric practice with a regular partner who I do believe he will be the father of my children, I'm just living it so beautifully, and it's fascinating. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just think that's it is. We live in the world of IVF right now, and where that is kind of like especially, I don't know if this, but the California just changed. I live in California. I know you don't, but California just changed a law in this month that health insurance is required to offer IVF. No?
Mhm. Okay.
So it's becoming a more and more and more common thing. And there's so many different layers to that, right? Where we have so many chemicals in our environments, all the perfumes and the plastics and plastic underwear. And there's just like chemical heavy metals. And there's just so many physical things that can cause and block that. And then there's emotional aspects, right? But what we're talking about is the more spiritual aspect of like the not the blocking it because we're so analytical and so not in the body and not in our pleasure, and we're not making pleasure the priority when pleasure is what makes babies. Like sex makes babies, and sex should be pleasurable. Like in my rule book, maybe I don't want to shit all over somebody, but like the intention of sex usually, in my opinion, is pleasure.
Yes. Yes. So it's interesting because some of the deeper imprints that I've been tracking, because that's really my job, is I'm a metaphysician. I work on the deeper levels of extracting deep layers of trauma and wounding, and I see the patterns in what people have been enduring. And it helps me to zoom out quite wide to see as a humanity what we've been missing. And one of the biggest ones is that orgasmic initiation that sparks our entire existence. And many of us weren't created from a dual orgasm, which would be ideal. It'd be great if mommy and daddy just came at the same time and we got made, but that's often not the case, which is totally fine. It's not necessary. But at the same time, when you think about the creation potential that gets unleashed in that moment, and that imprinting onto you as a being, and then further down the line, after the pregnancy happens and you're about to be born, there's another moment where that initiation gets to happen, where you get to be born through a portal that may or may not be orgasmic, but also is definitely shamanic and definitely psychedelic for the mother and the father too. That's also been taken out of our consciousness. So we're missing these two big initiations off the top, which kind of, I believe, stunts our growth spiritually, because if we don't get to experience that death and birth experience in the exact moment, because that's what birthing portals are, is like there's always going to be a death with the birth. And I also do abortion and miscarriage support work too, to support people in understanding these maps deeper, because this is the way the priestess, we are threshold guides. We move people through transitions, and these are the most important rites of passage that don't get honored. And so when we can like kind of work backwards from that and go, okay, from the point of conception, I want this energy of a creation of a baby to be imbued with sacredness and reverence in whichever form that is, because I'm not somebody who tells you like do exactly this. I can have suggestions for my clients, but at the end of the day, it's a creation practice. So you better be creative with it too. Figure out what works for you. So we can go into some of the practicals if you're interested. But
Yeah.
that's the first thing I want to mention because it's really important that as a humanity, we reclaim the power of conception energy as something that we can unleash as like it's part of our superpower toolkit.
It's so interesting. As you were talking this, like I was kind of like getting some like goosebumps. It's really interesting. And I just had this realization. I'm like, I wonder what my parents' sex life was like when they had me. It's so taboo to think about your parents having sex, right? But like we all come from sex. We all do.
Yeah.
Well, every single person on the planet came because of sex in one way or another. And my dad is pretty sex positive. My mom passed away, so I can't talk to her about that. But my dad is always pretty sex positive. He jokingly goes, "You know what the first best form of exercise is?" I'm like, "What, Dad?" He's like, "Walking." And he's like, "You know what the second one is?" I was like, "What?" He's like, "Sex." So like, I think we could have that conversation. And it's like curious. I'm like thinking, I'm like, I wonder what it was. And my dad actually got in a really bad car accident when he was 17, and he crushed his pelvis in like a bunch of different places. And then my mom had a really bad abortion when she was in her early 20s and kept having miscarriages. So they both thought they couldn't have children. But when then my mom used magic, really, if I think about it, she was pretty witchy when it comes to herbs and herbalism, like a kitchen witch, and used a bunch of herbs and healed, like fed my dad and her. And then they got pregnant with me. And so, like, I was very, very intentionally conceived. I know that, like, they practiced for like 11 months before I had me. But yeah, it's just like so interesting. I want to have I'm gonna have a conversation with my dad and be like, "Hey, how was you and my mom's sex life? I want to know about it."
Well, you should have him on the podcast. That would be such a wild conversation.
No, right? That would be. We've been having so much healing lately. I have healed so much with my dad in the last 2 months than I ever have in my life. We had like a 3-hour conversation recently, and I was able to tell him like all the moments in my childhood in which he caused trauma that was like that I had to unravel and figure out. And like he listened and heard and held space and understood my experience. And I was like, I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here to tell you what you did wrong. I'm not here to shame you. I just want you to listen to what I have to say. And it was so amazing.
I
So,
love that. Yeah.
yeah.
It's so powerful. And yeah, the way we connect with each other, like intimacy is one of the hardest things to tune into as human beings. And the way I see sacred sexuality is that it's a sovereign experience, actually. Even though you're coming into communion with someone else, you remain sovereign. And that whole dance is tricky, right? We have attachment issues and all of this stuff comes in and emotions get woven into our physical desires. And then we're also asking ourselves to be ourselves and to be sovereign in the experience, which I feel has been a game changer because in that way, I'm my own divine union. He is his own divine union. And then when we come together in divine union to create a sacred third, we're already in a trinity with God, you know? So it's like God has he's shown up, she's shown up, however you like to see that consciousness. And then in that way, then becomes an inevitability that you're going to create a third because you're already merged within.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
sovereignty. A lot of people don't really understand that concept or even really understand what it means. I think even like in the spiritual community, like there's an event here in Orange County once a month called Project Heartshine, and that one of the themes is sovereignty, and people are like, "Oh, what does that mean? What does that actually mean?" So you and I are very much embodied in it, and we understand it, and it's anchored into our nervous systems and our frequencies. And I think that's one of the reasons, like, I appreciate you and wanted you on the show is like I can feel that, right? That's rare. It doesn't happen very often. So I really want to like kind of dive into like what does sexual sovereignty actually mean? Because it's what I teach. It sounds like it's a form of you weave it into your offerings as well. But like let's kind of unravel that a little bit. Do you want to do that?
Yeah,
And
sure.
then let's talk about like practices, like simple practices that people can practice tonight with themselves or with their partner to like take that one toe and put it in the sexual sovereignty, sex ritual pool of water.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much, and I'll try and list off the most important pieces that make sense to me as a deeper foundational understanding. Because at the end of the day, like we are all free. Like we are born free and we are free. Maintaining that freedom is one of the main tasks of life, I believe. And that's what it comes down to is like asking yourself the questions of what rules govern me? What are the laws that govern me? Is it man-made law or is it universal law? And the Egyptian lineage really has taught me so much around this idea of universal law and hermetic principles and these simple polarity dynamics that create us, because it's all about union at the end of the day. It's about pendulation, moving in waves and inner and outer reflections above and below, macro and micro. And so I do remember the distinct moment where I reoriented myself to Ma'at, which is universal law. And I was like, whoa, something shifted. I just declared it. And it was so like I came into dominion over myself. I think it was in a priestess training where we did the sovereign queen activation. And I was like, I'm on my throne. This is me. I'm whole and complete as I am. I just made the declaration. That's the beautiful thing about it, is because these lineages also teach you that your word is law. So what you decide to say and speak is true. I mean, it depends on context sometimes whether or not it's received, but your own belief definitely has the power to override anything else that is projected on you. So then when we come into this state of like, oh, I'm sovereign, well, that means that all of these programs that we've been given as a society no longer apply. They don't run on this operating system anymore. And the sovereign operating system really is based on indigenous wisdom, and it's based on how we are, yeah, how we are in communion, and also don't lose our individuality or our sense of self through the process of being in communion. So that it's a lifelong practice to stay sovereign and to be in a sovereign lovership dynamic. It is rare because it requires someone to be able to be okay on their own, and most people aren't. Most people have to go through some kind of big breakup and then be single for 3 years like I did, to then call in divine union and be like, "Okay, now I can be me and I don't need you to complete me." But in this process of both being sovereign, we can merge at the highest level. Like, we can swap DNA codes and lifetimes of intel, and so that the other person's gonna be the parent of the child, like, within minutes. It's like it just is a knowing at a certain point, which I'm just saying from my own experience, is, like, such a blissful experience to just be like, "We're dropped in, here we are, you're the answer to my prayers." And I also wanna make that possible just by sharing my voice and my frequency for whoever's listening, and that it's totally possible. But we have to, again, ungroove ourselves from the old programs based in scarcity, lack, and slavery that need to be dismantled. And it's like happening as a collective is like all these slave programs. That's all that comes up whenever I journey now. I'm just clearing more and more slave programs. But then you can get into this like funky dynamic with the kink too, and then like revisit these themes in a beautiful, liberated way. So that's what I have to say about sovereignty to start off with, because it's about understanding the laws that govern your life and then how you get to make up your own rules about it.
So yeah, so like when we're talking about laws that govern your own life, it's like what society tells you is right, what your parents tell you is right. What if you were raised in a religion and that religion tells you that's right, or what are the country you're from, or the race you come from, or whatever tells you is supposed to be. But in my opinion, if those things tell you they're supposed to be and you're doing them and you're feeling unhappiness or lack or not fulfilled and you don't feel whole. And like to me, sovereignty is like a wholeness within self, right? So it's like I think a lot of people, I was talking to a girlfriend about this last night. You know, she's just got out of her Saturn return, and she's in the chaos of the unraveling of the codependency patterns right now. And this need for having a man to fulfill her and to feed her up and make her feel enough and nourished enough. And I was thinking back at it, I'm 36, and I was like, oh, when I was 30, I was going through this right now. Like, you're doing a great job. I know it's uncomfortable. Good job. And I chose to not intentionally not to have any dynamics with a man for 6 months. That was my thing. And that was hard back then. Let me tell you, I was like, wow, I am getting a lot of like fulfillment from outside validation from men desiring me. And it was really good for me and it was really uncomfortable. So like sometimes this path of sovereignty can be really challenging and overwhelming and uncomfortable and like clunky, like I said. But it's also on the other side of it when you do anchor into, like you were talking about, that moment of ma'at. When you anchor that in and you're in it, there's this whole new level of freedom and love and peace and forgiveness and radiance that happens. And it's really beautiful, like for me with my clients or my friends, to see them in that transition and have that path, because it is possible. And I also love what you said about like being careful about like what you speak. And it's like, I think all the religious texts, they start like in the beginning, it was the word. And so it is really important when you speak. And I'm speaking specifically to like the spiritual conscious community of women. Like there's a frequency that I hear a lot of the time is, oh, where are all the good men out, or all the good men are taken, or the men aren't doing the work and they're behind, or like there's this whole story there. And I think that if you believe that to be true, then it is true. That is your reality. And I'm really grateful that I've been really working on myself, because every man that comes into my life, whether he's a lover or a friend, is in adoration and adoring me and in devotion to me. And it nourishes us both. And there's really clear boundaries with certain ones, right? Like they know what that role is. And so I really want to encourage you that if you're listening to this right now and you're really calling in that sacred union and you're really wanting that deep devotional love, really do the deep devotional love to yourself and work on that path of sovereignty. And then when you feel it, because you will, it'll happen. There'll be like you're talking about that click that happens. You're like, oh, this is it. Then intentionally craft and create it.
Yeah. And that's what ritual is too. It's like, it can be as simple as lighting a candle and just having the intention to create a space for alchemy to happen. Like that's the way I think of it. It's like, it's a ceremony. It becomes a ceremony because you decide that it's sacred. And that might need some warming up for certain men. They might get a little triggered by it, but you can also be like, this is going to be a sensual experience, AKA I'm going to anoint you. I love anointing oils. They're my favorite. Like I remember when I first met my partner, he started anointing me just because that's what he already knew. And I was like, here it is. My search is over because you're anointing me. And it's the art of like scent and then, feeding me chocolates, eating chocolate off of me, eating honey off of me. Like the sensory aspect of sex has just gone away. And it's like, yeah, change the lighting, change the way your senses are engaging with the experience, and you change the quality of the sex. And it's not about a destination. It's just about present moment awareness, which becomes a meditation. And it just is like, how am I giving and how am I receiving? And how much can I be fully in the giving when I'm giving? And how much can I be fully in the receiving when I'm receiving? And so none of it feels like a job. It just feels like this beautiful flowiness of like the dynamic movement between two energies that are creating a potential between the two of them. But aphrodisiacs work, I'll say.
What's your favorite?
My favorite is deer meat.
Oh my God, I love this.
It's interesting because my partner is a sacred hunter, and he brought home this deer that he hunted. And we'd been apart for 2 weeks, and it was the most incredible aphrodisiac because this deer was wild. It had just mated. It was a buck. It was full of testosterone, and it was just like, it had that drive. And then, yeah, just eating cacao and damiana as well is a really powerful ally. Lotus, rose, obviously. just these plant allies are powerful. And if someone makes a love potion, just get it. Just buy it. Like especially if we are proper herbalists and make really good tinctures. Like we've been working with love potion and it feels different. It feels like mating sex because of how the plant allies are also working with us.
Yeah, I was just thinking about velvet deer antler. I think that one's an aphrodisiac, and it's a tincture you can get.
It's also a fertility support too, because all these things are to get us juicy. And there's a lot around, yeah, what you're talking about with all the endocrine disruptors that we're still trying to overcome in our environments. But the plants are really helpful to help clear out some of those things because, yeah, we want our hormonal systems to be working well. And sometimes you need to be in the juice. Like I notice when I'm getting juicy and I'm like, okay, this is because I'm well supplemented.
Right, yeah. And we were talking about damiana right before we get on the call, but damiana is a big plant ally that I work with a lot. And I always jokingly say it opens your heart and it opens your pussy. So like sometimes if I'm wanting to like write or create something or want to get into creative flow, I'll drink a cup of damiana and then I'll get into it. And then I'll go to the bathroom and I'm like, I'm not thinking about sex. I'm like creating, right? But it's that creative energy, is the sex energy. And then I'll go to the bathroom and I'll like wipe myself and I'll be like, why am I so wet? Oh my gosh. And then I realize it's because I was drinking the damiana. So it really like lubes everything out down there. It's not good for actually pregnant women, but it's also really good for fertility. But if you're pregnant, you shouldn't drink it. And it's really good for postmenopause. I know that the Mayans have been using it for thousands of years for sex rituals. So like, and then that one in blue lotus is a really good one. And rose petals. So doing like even like a simple ritual for sex magic that you could do is like having tea with damiana, blue lotus, and rose, and lighting a candle. And when you light the candle, just saying an intention, like, what is my intention in this intimacy practice with you tonight? And like vocalizing it and saying it out loud. And then another one that I love to have clients do because it's so simple is really doing like rotational belly breaths together before any penetration happens, and eye gazing. So lighting a candle, drinking some tea, saying your intention, doing some eye gazing, and doing some rotational belly breaths because it can really anchor you into the body. A lot of times people have issues with orgasming or letting go and surrendering because they're doing the chest
Mhm.
like breath, which is very like almost like anxiety riding. So it's like that simple slowing down. And then I love that you talked about like honey, like that'd be fun. I'm like, wow, I don't know why I haven't used honey in the bedroom. I can't believe I haven't done it. I'm obsessed with honey. What the freak? Like, that's great. What? Give me that. I mean, I use honey masks and I eat honey all the time.
Just have someone eat something off of you. It's the best feeling ever.
I mean, I've had whipped cream and I've had chocolate, but never honey.
Okay, yeah, go for the honey. Go for the honey. It changes the game when you're also just present with somebody and going slow. Like it's something that I feel we just forget as we rush. And sometimes you do need to have a quickie and it's great, but if you can take the time and just be with, it's all a matter of presence at the end of the day. If you're not present to that person, then you're losing all of that energy that you're actually focusing on bringing life through. And then you can also just call in your spirit baby too to be with you because spirit babies aren't really babies. They're ancestors actually. They're ancient ones that can see from a higher vantage point. So I like to do that too. If I'm in a beautiful communion, I'm like, spirit baby, come on in, like be with us right now. And that can just be the simplest way to invite them into a safe place to land because ultimately we want to become a vibrational match to our spirit babies, and our spirit babies are advanced. Most of them, if you're probably listening here, you probably have, and you're on that journey, is that you probably have a very highly intelligent, light seed of a child that wants to come in, and they are waiting for mommy and daddy to elevate their frequency to be a vibrational match to us. And so sometimes that's also part of our intention is just be like, we intend to purify through this practice together so that we can be a match to you. And that's what I like consulting people on if they're going to do that for fertility.
Amazing. So if people want to find you and work with you, you work with fertility and you work with you're a doula for abortions and miscarriages as well, right?
Yeah.
And do you do any other offerings of work?
Yeah. So I also have a course on healing the mother wound because that's one of my specialties is growing up with a interesting mother who was very traumatized. And so that's a very important one for those of us that are leaking our power and we want to be more in our center and more in our service. And then, yeah, my monthly abortion and miscarriage pregnancy loss circles are free and anyone can join in. I'll have a calendar on my website, flowpriestess.com. And that to me feels like such an important piece because that rite of passage doesn't really get honored enough or if not at all. And we create blockages or blockages get created within us if we don't clear out those old energies. So like with
Mm.
your yeah, so reach out to me. I also love to support creatives in general because it's all the same energy, right? So artists, I'm also a singer and a DJ, and I'm on that path too. So for those of us that are just here to craft culture through our beingness and our offerings, then yeah, I'm here for you. So please join in. And I also have monthly flow club, which is the 22nd of every month, a free call where you get to receive codes from me because I also channel the Egyptian gods and they have some offerings for us too.
Amazing. Awesome. And then you're on Flow Priestess on Instagram, and then flowpriestess.com is your website. Oh, I love it. I'm loving this conversation. It's really nice. I hope we didn't lose a lot of people in what we're talking about. And also it's really nice to be met in those ways and have those understandings and the ease and the comfort in talking about it too. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, so thank you so much, everyone. You can find me at Rose Heartsong on Instagram and roseheartsong.com. And reach out to me with any questions that you might have. Oh, let's do one more thing. If somebody wants to learn more about it, like what is your favorite book in this realm? Like just to like get curious.
Favorite book? I love Margot Anand's work. She's got a few different books on sex magic, and there's illustrations in there. There's like some really in-depth practices that you can do. You can pretend that you are a goat with a giant penis in front of your partner and gallivant around and do laughing yoga. Like
Oh my goodness.
weird things are in that book,
Oh gosh.
but I love it because she is really OG when it comes to also the magician part of sex magic and what it means to be a magician. And so yeah, highly recommend Margot Anand's work.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful to have you. Have a beautiful night, everyone, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.